I am super pumped to have Alex Ansaldo with me today. Alex is a mechanical engineer, transdermal drug delivery researcher, medical doctor, and now graphic designer. So, Alex is as indecisive as they come, no doubt, much to the concern of his current boss and wife, Brianna Ansaldo, head honcho at Bambi Media. So, Alex is not a speaker, he's not selling anything, and he doesn't have any courses or masterminds. He's just a guy that has made some big changes in his life that I was super fascinated with. So, had to talk to him on the Leading You podcast. So, welcome, Alex.
Oh, thanks very much. Thank you very much for having me.
Pleasure. So, I'm really keen to get into your story because you are quite fascinating to me, and I'm sure many others, in terms of your career journey. So, I'd love to start with young Alex. So, little Alex, what did he want to be when he grew up?
Oh, wow. I was thinking about this before the show. I actually think I had no idea, and not in the sense that I want to be this, I want to be that, I want to try this, I want to try that. I actually had no recollectable idea of what I wanted to do with my life through my formative years. I just kind of floated along. I was a bit of a follower, I think. When it came time to decide on a university degree, because I had to go to university, that was drilled into me from the parents. When it came time for the degree, it was I didn't really know. So my dad was like, "Well, you can do a lot with an engineering degree. Why not do engineering?" And so then it became, okay, well, I guess I'll select what I want to do within engineering, and fell into mechanical engineering that way.
Okay.
So it was through no positive step of my own that I ended up initially in engineering, the first step of my tertiary education it were to be.
Amazing. So, how long did you do that for?
I
The
was actually I spent
mechanical.
five years doing mechanical because I did an extended major and honors. But throughout that, I did a year of uh, business management and music technology because I'd kind of done a couple of years of engineering. I was like, I don't know if this is for me. Why
Mm.
don't I just flake out and do something else for a year? I'll defer my engineering. Did business management and music tech, which was great. See all the University of Queensland's ancient music equipment, big 64 channel analog decks and tape mixers and all this fancy stuff. And throughout that year, I actually went a lot to Brianna's uni just to hang out with her and do some recording and stuff down at her university at the con. So that was a fun year. But after that, I don't know, through external pressure from my parents, or perhaps I was a bit worried I was becoming too rudderless. I went back to engineering and then finished off the degree. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And so did you meet Brianna at uni, or how did you meet her?
Uh, it was probably in about my first year of uni that I met her
Yeah.
through friends of friends, and it was actually, I guess, officially we met. I was courting her best friend at the time, and asking for her advice as to how to proceed, and because me and her friend had been on and off a little bit, and I was like, all right, I got to stop being so indecisive. Let's ask her out. So I was talking to Brianna. Hey, should I ask your friend out? She was like, yeah. Kate's always said you're great. She thinks you're awesome. And so I went and asked Kate out, and she just rejected me. And and, and so then, of course, took some. The shoulder to cry on was Brianna's, and we became very fast friends, and hung out heaps and heaps and heaps, and had a long friendship before then. We started going out and got married, and yeah, so that was how we met, through that sort of trying to go out with her friend. Yeah.
I love that. That's gorgeous. Okay, so mechanical engineer and then transdermal drug delivery researcher. What does that
Mm.
tell me what it means? How did you get
Oh,
there?
that means trying to deliver drugs through the skin, basically. So
Okay.
so so we don't have to give people tablets or big, scary needles that hurt a lot. We can use essentially millions of tiny needles that just puncture the top layer of skin and deliver drugs there. And there's a bunch of immune cells there ready to receive them.
Yeah.
So we were trying to figure out how to design this delivery device and things. And so I did that straight out of engineering, because I like the medical side. I like the the immunology, the biochem, the anatomy, that sort of thing was very interesting. Um, and it kind of started my process towards medicine.
Mm.
My engineering degree led to sort of product design, which led to medical device design, which led to medical physiology and anatomy, which led eventually to a medical degree.
Amazing. So,
Hmm.
how many years of study is like a medical doctor?
It's
Is it?
4 years, the medical degree,
Yeah.
and then when you come out, you've got to do your internship, and then internship is like a year as a um, your first year as a doctor,
Yep.
and then you do your resident years, which can be 1 or 2 years typically.
Mm.
That's your when you're kind of like a big little doctor,
A
and
big
then
little
you
doctor.
then you try. Usually, typically, you'll look into your training programs, so mental health, GP, hospital, surgery, internal medicine, those sort of things, and start
Yep.
gearing your placements and your years towards the training program you want to get onto.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. And so what did you love about being a doctor? And how many years did you do that for?
So after graduating medical school, I was a doctor for just over 5 years, and again, I guess it's hard to say what I expected to love about it because I'm
Mm.
not sure if I've got a great story or a great reason for getting into medicine. I kind of
Mm.
stumbled along this pathway through more and more medical studies and ended up in medicine. So I can't really claim this big valiant drive of I want to help people. I want to stop the suffering. I want to. That didn't really. That wasn't really first and foremost when I went into it. But when you became a doctor. Um, you very much felt part of a team. It was a very
Mm.
tight knit team, whether it was because it was just camaraderie through shared suffering, because the work is just relentless. But
Yeah.
um, you definitely did feel part of a team and a very crucial part. Um, and if you did get a second to sort of take a step back and look at the situation that your patient was in, the empathy that you got, the opportunity to experience was quite rewarding. Um,
Mm.
trying to put yourself in their shoes and take a real sense of satisfaction from being able to lessen suffering just for that one person, even if it was for only a couple of days. Yeah.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
there definitely was some pluses to be taken from it.
Mm. I bet your patients were devastated to lose you because it's really hard to find a really good GP.
Oh well, I wasn't a GP. I spent most of my time in general surgery in
Oh, in
Ipswich.
surgery.
So yeah, so lots of pus. There's lots of pus in Ipswich, as I'm sure there is everywhere. But
Oh
yeah.
my God, that's hilarious. So then the jump out and
Mm,
into Brianna's business, into something completely different, like really
yeah.
creative. Was there like a moment that made you say or decide, look, this just isn't for me? Because I can imagine that the hours would have been incredibly difficult with,
Mm.
your medicine. So was there something or did something happen when you went, you know what, I'm out?
There was a little bit of a definable moment. I found myself sort of taking stock of what I wanted out of life and what I was currently getting out of life, and I was increasingly making decisions to try and achieve some sense of work-life balance. And
Mm.
so, and for I ended up in medicine, which is not a great one for work life. But throughout my training, I was thinking, okay, what doctors out there look like they've got a decent balance, and what professions, what trainings. And it's sad that you've got to choose your vocation based on the least amount of suffering you're going to need to endure and the most enjoyment out of life. It'd be nice in an ideal world to be go, I just love neurosurgery and I'd like to do that and have a life. Can I do that? I can't. Okay, so I got to cross that off the list. So there was a lot of trial and error and thinking, oh geez, no, that won't do, that won't do, that won't do. Ended
Yeah.
up in nuclear medicine, which is sort of mostly looking at the imaging associated with cancer,
Okay.
mostly. And that sort of led me towards radiology, so the interpretation of medical scans. And that seemed to be able to afford a reasonable work-life balance. So I was just like, okay, well, let's pursue this, and got onto the training program, did the interviews, and I was studying for the part one, which is a big exam you got to do shortly after getting on the program.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was working long hours and then studying at night. And I've got a couple of young kids, and
Mm.
wasn't particularly active with them, or at least there wasn't enough of me present to enjoy them at the time. And we managed to go on a little break, little holiday, like to the coast or something like that. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to leave the books at home because I hadn't done it before, and I'm just going to go on a holiday and just enjoy it. And it was lovely. It was fantastic, very restful, and a nice glimpse at what life could be. And then I got back and did a big shift and pick up the books, and I got quite jittery. I suspect it was probably some form of panic anxiety or panic attack.
Mm.
Quite jittery, heart rate up, breathing fast, worried, like very restless, looking at this material I was supposed to be studying, and that really brought it to the forefront. Like what I was doing was, was the opposite of what I should be doing right now. And that made me stop and think and look forward. And I think, okay, so I do this exam and I get on the program and I do 5 years on the program, including two major research assignments. And then I sit for secondary exams, and then there's a fellowship year, and then you're consultant. And at that time, you can choose your hours. You can work 3 days a week and still earn 400,000 a year, crazy money. And, and then I was thinking, well, at that point, my kids will be like, my oldest will be a teenager.
Yeah.
and and they would have passed through formative years without me, essentially. and
Mm.
and that was just too valuable to pass up. So at that point it became very clear, or black and white, I suppose. I was like, well, if that's a priority, you can't keep going on your path you're on. And I was already at what I thought was the, I guess, most flexible stream of medicine. And
Mm.
so I guess if I couldn't make that work, I'm out.
Yeah.
And then it kind of clicked, and dawned on me then. So it was somewhat of a defining moment, but it was the culmination of probably a year or two of dissatisfaction in the area.
Yeah. And knowing, I suppose you really had that in the back of your mind, like you knew what you wanted. And it took you to step away, which is so common for people. They need to step away to get that perspective to really understand what they're missing out on. Um, you know,
Absolutely, because you
for,
can get onto the conveyor belt of
mm,
get a job and get promotions and rack up some debt, so you need to stay in your job, so then you can get promotions and then rack up more debt with houses and cars. So you can end up just sort of getting stuck in this pipeline until you take a bird's eye view or zoom out and look at whether or not this is going to put you on a path to where you want to get to in 5 or 10 years. Yeah.
mm. So, and you've had a love for music. Clearly, you mentioned about the uni.
Mm.
So, was that just like, okay, I'm going to start doing what you're doing now? And was that sort of an easy transition for you? Like, how did you
Mm.
make the transition, I suppose? What was the type of feedback that you received externally that you might have had to navigate as well?
Mm. Well, looking at the transition, once I'd made the decision, I arranged some babysitting for the kids so Brianna and I could go out and have a dinner and talk about this and try and strategize. And it was also in the back of my mind that Brianna was sort of being held back quite a lot by being at home with the kids. She had started Bambi Media at this point, and she was working hard as well.
Mm,
And she had quite a lot, obviously, of drive, entrepreneurial drive. And I didn't possess that. I didn't possess that type of drive that she had. And so when I was thinking medicine's not for me, and looking at Brianna and thinking, well, she would love to just smash Bambi Media and get that up there, then it became a bit more obvious that I was like, well, I'll take the kids, I'll stay home and do all the domestic duties and things, and you just expand this business of Bambi Media as much as you'd like to. And so that was the swap initially. Um, we looked at how much savings we had and how much payout I'd get from leaving medicine and what Brianna was bringing in. And we thought, oh, we can make it work for a little while. And then once it was working. It was working quite well, and I was really enjoying it. I was taking the kids to the op shops and to parks after school every day, and smashing it. It was great. So I was
Yeah.
making up for a lot of lost time. And
Mm.
I think one night I'd looked at what Brianna was doing, and she was doing podcast editing for a few clients. She was also doing their show notes. She was also doing their upload and scheduling, and she was also doing their snippets and their graphic design. And through discussions, I'd heard that she wasn't a huge fan of doing the design work. She was more the audio editing, strategizing, big picture. And one night I'd had a look at some of her design work, and I was like, oh, that's that's no good. I can't believe people are paying for that. And so so I had a look at it and thought, oh geez, well, right away you need to make those letters bigger, and oh, there are too many elements there, and straight away that's not symmetric. And and so she was like, well, what did you do it? And I was like, oh, okay. So I started, again, just another example of me falling into a role, I suppose.
Yeah.
But started just doing the design, and I was pretty good at it. I was not formally
Mm.
trained, but I knew what was symmetrical, what looked nice, what was too busy, not busy enough. And so then I took more and more of the design work away from her, and she was able to look more and more big picture. And then the business really took off from there. As soon as she was sort of untethered to aspects of the role she didn't want to do, she was really able to expand the business and get a bunch more clients, and then a bunch more employees, and then myself sort of taking the lead designer role and having an illustrator and designer underneath me. And then uh, that's really kind of snowballed quite quickly. After that transition from medicine, Bambi Media was able to take off as if it just a chain had been sort of cut, and then it was able to just fly. Yeah.
Amazing.
Mm.
So, was there a lot of feedback externally that you received and you were like, I'm not listening to this? Lots of
Yeah.
pressure
Well,
to
I guess
stay?
that's right. The first feedback I had was from the consultants who I was currently working with in medicine. I had about five, um, and who I'd told individually, because I had good relationships with all of them, that I was actually leaving medicine. And the response there was quite moving. These were all 50 to 70-year-old males, and very heartfelt emotional responses. I think two of them shed some tears, and one of them even expressed similar feelings to do with wanting to leave the profession.
Oh,
And I think there's a lot of probably unrecognized dissatisfaction amongst doctors that feel that they've done so much study they can't get out.
yes.
Um, so the initial feedback was shock and I guess what a waste. Like it was a
Mm,
bit like, well, what about, you've done all this study, your resume looks great, you're on the program, you've and yeah, there was a bit of, yeah, I guess it was just shock and disbelief that I'd go that way. And
mm,
then after I was out, then it was the parents as well. My parents were very it took them a while to process. I initially told them, and it was very, oh, like, okay, wow. And it seemed like it was a muted response, really, to what I'd just told them. And it came out in the days and weeks after that, their true response, because they'd had some shock, and they needed to process.
yeah.
And they were like, it was, having a son as a doctor, or a son or daughter as a doctor, it's it's a little brag for a parent, I think, based on the prestigiousness of the medical
Yeah.
profession over the last decades, particularly as that generation grew up. It was
Mm,
very easy for them to tell their friends what I did. And going into podcast production, graphic design, I had no idea what that was. They couldn't explain what that was to someone. So it was a bit tricky, I think, for them to make that adjustment. It took them some time.
mm,
They thought,
yeah.
they're all about stability, predictability, risk aversion, be prepared. And what I was doing was the complete opposite of that. Um, but the
Yes.
response, the response from Brianna's parents was a different one. It was more of, you got to do what you enjoy, or at least you got to do something that's not going to destroy you, and but never to lose sight of the fact that you've got a family to provide for. So
Mm,
they're balance. You got to balance those two requirements, but certainly more of the good on you for pursuing happiness over obligation or sunk cost. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I can totally understand your parents' response because when I jumped out of my corporate career, I told my parents and they were like, what? Like, you're going to start your own business? Like, what about the security, your income? You've got a
Yeah.
mortgage. And it's like, my God, don't doubt me. I don't need you to doubt me right now. So I've just made this
Yeah, exactly
decision and I've
right.
done it. So I also love the obvious partnership that you and Brianna have in terms of really supporting each other. And it's such a, I believe, such a key to success in anything that you do when you have like a really great partnership and can work that out. So I just love hearing that. And thank you for sharing like your story and how you've got there. And the reason why I really wanted to have you on today is because I speak to so many people who are stuck doing something that they really don't like, makes them really unhappy. They don't have the work life balance and they don't necessarily want to step outside of their comfort zone, whether that be for paycheck or just because it's something that they know or something that they've studied a long time for, or they've climbed the ladder and they've finally got this title, and
Mm.
they just won't let it go, but really want to. So, what do you encourage people to do if they do find themselves in that situation where they are unhappy, but they're fearful of taking that step?
Yeah, that I think there's a lot of that in that area of motivational speaking that you've probably heard out there that you can somewhat loosely apply to your own life. But I think for me, it would be to make sure you've got a healthy dose of nihilism, of uh, thinking, how, how much does this all matter? We are probably, we've got maybe 90 years on the planet. If
Mm,
we've lived 30, 40, maybe there's 50 years left. If you look at that in months, that's 600 months. And then if you think, geez, how much have I easily let months fly by? And I've only really got a few hundred left. You think, oh, that's that's a bit eye opening. Maybe I need to just give yourself a day to zoom out and think, if I didn't need money at all,
mm,
what would I want to do? What would I want to wake up and do? Or
mm.
um, and I think, of course, underwriting this response is a bunch of privilege. I was middle class family. I was put through good schools and helped to go through uni and things like that. So if I went out on a limb, it's probably easier if I fail for me to fall on my feet. So there's not a lot of people who are lucky enough to be in that situation too.
Mm.
So there's a lot of enjoyment to be had in life, and I think it's easier to find it outside of work. I think a lot of times you need to. It's great if you can find a profession you love and it brings you a lot of joy and
Mm.
and that. But perhaps if you've got something that you just think, this is not draining, it's fine, I like to do it, but really be present and enjoy your moments that you've got, because we've all heard those stories of went to the doctor and they said this horrible diagnosis, or a family member, a car accident, or things can change. You never know what's going to happen. So yeah, really to try and be a bit, live in the moment and be a little bit, just a touch nihilistic.
Yeah, I love that, and I think it's really great advice, and it sort of supports what I say to people as well. It's like, don't wait, as you said, don't wait for that health diagnosis
Mm.
to make the change, because it's so interesting how when people get that diagnosis, they then can all of a sudden make the change.
Yeah.
Um, it's just I always think about your legacy, the legacy that you create every single day through
Mm.
your actions and non-actions, decisions and non-decisions. And it's like, are you proud of the legacy that you're creating today? So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think there's that. I can't remember who said this quote. You always have some inspirational quotes in here, but they said often we say, "Oh, I wish 5 years ago I'd just
Yeah.
made the change, jumped out, stopped drinking, changed jobs, started exercising more, learnt a language, insert whatever you want there." But they never really say, "All right, in 5 years, I want to have stopped drinking, changed jobs, learnt a language, started working out, so I'll start today." They always look back and wish they'd started, but
Mm,
they never think today I'll start. So
yeah,
it's yeah.
absolutely. So, Alex, I've loved chatting to you. And I have one final question, and Biana might hate me for asking this question. But
Mm.
what is next for Alex? Where will your curiosity take you?
Oh, goodness. No doubt it'll be something which falls in my lap without any of my orchestrating, as has been my past. But I think I'm still on the journey. I'm still detaching my identity from being a doctor, to be honest. It's
Okay.
taken quite a long time to do that,
Yeah.
which I know is very egotistical, but I'm getting there. Staying more and more frequently. No, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor. But in the years after I stopped, I was like, I'm a doctor. I'm just not practicing. And then no, that's
Yeah.
changed. I'm not a doctor. And but I'm definitely on the path of health, food, longevity, living a long, enjoyable life with the time I've got left, and trying to, well, in all honesty, make a part of my role redundant at Bambi Media. So getting processes and systems in place and employees to lessen my workload, ideally somewhat substantially, not completely. I love working here, but definitely lessen it so that I can get down to 4 day weeks, stop working nights, not have to do anything on the weekend, and and start really seeing what that time, that newfound sense of time brings.
Mm. I love that, Alex. Thank you so much. I've loved you sharing your story, and it's such a great story for the Leading You podcast in terms of how you've led yourself through your life. So while you say that things are falling in your lap, I also think there's a bit of you know orchestration there, and the curiosity is taking you down this road. So, Alex, thank you so much for being a guest today.
Oh, my pleasure. It was lovely. Thanks very much for having me, Julie.
Thank you.